because my next guest has been instrumental in keeping up with just how pathetic, just how lame, just how impotent the Texas state legislative session has been for 2025. I'm talking about the great state rep, Brian Harrison from the Midlothian area. Welcome back to the James Show. And I haven't enjoyed one of our segments this year, Brian.
You're hurting my feelings, but you know what? Hey, it's always great to be back with you on WBAP.
Well, it'd be different if you have good news. It's not that I don't like you. It's just it's always bad news. And so we're getting to the point now to where it was funny like the first couple weeks or maybe 3 weeks into it when I had you on. You're like, can you believe we haven't passed a bill yet? Oh, my God, that's crazy. Well, here we are. What are we in, week 8, and you guys still haven't passed a bill?
It's been at least 9, and we just took our 10th. We just left the floor. It's Thursday morning for our 10th long weekend in the 10 weeks we've been here. And not only is it an outrage that we're only working, a couple hours, 3 days a week, but we are now breaking the Constitution because the Constitution literally does not let us leave for more than 3 days unless we get permission from the Senate and vote on it. But because they were so embarrassed by their votes to go home early, they stopped voting on it. They said, you know what, screw it. We'll just break the Constitution and hope nobody cares. So, yeah, we're almost halfway through the entire session, and the Texas House hasn't heard a single bill on the floor. But as you know, we haven't done nothing. We have passed resolutions to honor Beyonce, and just last week we passed a resolution to honor or celebrate Zoroastrianism Day here at the Texas Capitol. But look, no, with an America First president back in the White House, Texas voters have been completely betrayed. They voted for Trump by 14 points, but Kamala Harris's team controls the Texas House, and I think it's the biggest form of voter fraud.
Dance party with Beyonce.
Dance party with Beyonce. That's all y'all have done?
Dance party with Beyonce.
So, Brian, we're getting into a special territory here where we're making some bad history.
Yeah, we are.
Have we ever had a Texas House of Representatives not pass a single bill all session?
It's actually becoming a subject of debate down here in the Capitol, whether they're in the history of the whole state of Texas, if any Texas House has ever dragged its feet this long. What I can tell you is we never took as long as it took our Rhino failed House, liberal quote unquote leadership team to give us committee assignments. They have dragged their feet on organizing the House more than any House in history. That I can tell you. And what's becoming abundantly clear is that even though voters gave Republicans a 26-seat majority in the Texas House, in order to take power for themselves, 30-something sellout Rhino fake Republicans made a deal with the devil. They ran over to 50 Democrats and said, hey, guys, if y'all will support us and give us the speaker's gavel, we will help you grow government. We'll help you increase spending. We will help you enact the Democrat agenda, even though voters whooped you at the ballot box. We're going to give you the power they gave us as long as you let us control the Texas House. And so in exchange for the Democrats propping up the leadership in the Texas House is doing them a solid, doing the Democrats a favor, and stopping Republican priority after Republican priority. And in fact, they ground the entire Texas House to a standstill.
And you say there's 30 guys that are responsible for this, 30 Republicans?
Yeah, I forget the exact number, but yeah, he got elected.
Give me the list, Brian. That's our list. Brian, we talked about this before.
I'll get it for you. I'll post it right now as soon as I hang up on X if you want to see it there. I think I've already posted it before. But yeah, the people that voted for the speaker sold out the voters that sent them to Austin. And worse, the people that voted for the House Rules Package, what I call the Democrat Empowerment Act, that was the bill that gave Democrats more power than they've probably ever had in the modern history of the Texas House. And voters need to know about the betrayal that's happening behind their backs under the pink dome. Look, we've got a reputation for leading in freedom and liberty, but because of sellout fake Republicans, we're just coasting on that reputation. I'm doing everything I can to help Texas live up to that reputation. We should be the number one state in America, James. I know you believe this, for freedom and individual liberty, but we're just not doing it right now because we've letting Democrats control the uniparty down here in Austin.
Yeah, well, dude, I can't even buy old turkey on a Sunday, so don't tell me about freedom. State Rep Brian Harrison, give me that list. I'm going to put it on WBAP.com, and we'll see if we can get this to catch on. We know some influencing people with far more followers than us. And if we can get this S list out there and actually, God, I can't believe the primaries are the most important election that we're going to have in Texas, but I think it could be if we can get this going on.
Well, I'm going to send it to you. I mean, right as soon as I hang up here, I'm going to tweet it out. I'm going to tag you. And that way, all the voters, 30 million Texans on X, am I at Brian E. Harrison, at Brian E. Harrison on X. I will post out two lists. One for the number of voters that broke faith with the number of representatives that broke the trust of the voters that sent them down here and voted for Dustin Burrows, who was the Democrats' pick for Speaker. And I'm also going to tweet out the list of the Republicans that voted for the Democrat Empowerment Act. That was literally a vote to put Kamala Harris's team in charge of the Texas House. And Texans, as far as I'm concerned, Texans have every right to know who took those votes.
All right, Brian Harrison, on some of the biggest priorities, are we going to get let down? Are we going to get school choice of any kind?
Well, we should have already passed it by now. I mean, we're over halfway through session, and it was an emergency item, which means we could have taken it up months ago. So it's indefensible that we haven't even had a single bill on the floor. The Texas Senate passed their version of the bill. The Texas House is working on their version, although no one knows what's even going to be in the final version of the Texas House bill. And here's what I fear. The Texas House bills, to the extent that I understand them, I want Texas to have universal school choice because I think every child deserves a quality education. That means every parent should get to have an education savings account and pick where their child goes to school. The parent should make that choice, not the government. And so when I say universal school choice, what that means is every parent should get to do it. But I think what the House bills do, I think they're only going to let 1%, maybe 1.5% of Texas students qualify for an education savings account, which means this, quote, universal school choice bill, and I refuse to call it that. I think Texans are going to be a lot of surprised if we pass it, but 99% of Texas families don't qualify. And then to add insult to injury, one of the main reasons I support school choice is for the benefits from competition. School choice will improve public schools by making them compete. Competition works in every other area of our economy. But what the House plans to do is for every $1 we spend on education savings accounts, it sounds like they're going to pour $9 more, so 9 times the amount of money onto a failing government education monopoly, which means they're going to get more money to educate even fewer students, which means they'll actually will have very perversely, they may have an incentive, a financial incentive to continue failing. And when we've got a situation right now where only 24% of Texas 8th graders can do math proficiently, we've got a crisis here, and we need to make up for being late to school choice by being bold. I want Texas to have the best education program in America. I want our public schools to be the best, our charters to be the best, our private schools to be the best, and I want homeschooling freedom to reign supreme. I don't want government to get involved in private schools or homeschools, and we can accomplish all that. We just got to have the courage to do the right thing and be bold and do what the voters of Texas who sent us down here want us to do for them.
Brian Harrison, having a bad school choice bill, or especially one that's this bad, is worse than not passing one at all, because if we come back in a couple years from now, the next time we try this or have another session, or maybe it's 4 years from now, they'll be able to say, well, we already tried school choice and it didn't work. And so,
well, that's my fear. And get this too, one thing I forgot to mention, but I think Texans deserve to know the Texas House wrote the bill. Keep in mind, we're only going to give school choice to about 1 or 1.5% of Texas students, but in that 1 or 1.5%, the Texas House wrote it in such a way that that's going to include illegal aliens.
Barf.
So what that means, right? So what that means is the effect of that would be that illegal aliens might actually be prioritized over hardworking legal Texans who are American citizens. And I'm going to do everything I can to get that bill changed. We got to make this thing better. I want to fight for the best school choice bill that we can do.
All right. So what's with the THC bill? Who was asking for that?
I honestly don't know. It wasn't anybody in my district, to the best I can tell. I haven't had any of my voters ask me to do this. I know the Senate just passed something. I haven't had a chance to read it, so I haven't taken a position on it. But let me tell you, I've got real concerns about growing government. It seems like every every day down here, we're just making government bigger. We've got a reputation for being a small government state, but it's just not true. And it seems like a lot of people want to get government bigger. I have no idea how much this thing's going to cost.
It just came out of nowhere, though, like out of left field. I know people who are asking for school choice. I know people who are asking for lower property taxes. I know people who are asking for even a gambling bill. But I didn't even know this was on anybody's mind. So that's why I'm caught off guard with that. Speaking of,
and it seems like, right. And I wasn't, as you know, I had the very real honor of being a senior official in President Trump's first term. President Trump signed the 2018 Farm Bill, which legalized certain, hemp products. And it sounds like this might, if I understand it right, this might make things illegal that President Trump made legal during his first term. So I haven't read it. I don't have a position on the bill just yet, but I will say I've got some real concerns based on what I've heard.
All right, Brian Harrison, thanks for another terrible update from the House of Representatives in Austin. Appreciate your time, sir.
God bless y'all. God bless Texas.
My next guest is John Schultz, and he's going to help me figure out what the heck's going on with AI, because I think most people have already jumped on it and started using it as a very powerful tool. But now I'm seeing reports that it's tearing some companies apart. John Schultz, welcome back. Congrats on the success of the John Schultz podcast. But share with us now, what's the problem with AI in some workplaces? How could this possibly be a problem?
I don't know how much of a problem it is. I wasn't surveyed, but not that my business makes that much of a big deal. But I really think it kind of boils down to communication and setting priorities and objectives and goals within the organization. And I really think it's a management issue, not necessarily a technology issue. Setting proper expectations with your employees is always a big challenge. You're trying to get your employees to basically move in the right direction, even here with Easy Locator, when we're trying to do what we want to do to help our superintendents out, place at optimum hole location every day. Sometimes we get our wires crossed a little bit. But I really think it's only temporary. I remember when the internet was coming into vogue, there was a lot of, issues going on with that, a little confusion. Every time there's a new layer of technology being introduced, especially in the workforce or in the consumer market, I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding, a little bit of confusion. And once that all settles down, I think it all works out well. I think 2025, we're probably going to see a lot of shakeout occurring. I'm starting to see a lot of startups in what I'll call the open AI market, to compete against, Google's product, Elon Musk's product, the Open AI, ChatGPT, DeepSeek. There's a lot of those coming out. So I think there's a lot of confusion on what direction to go.
Well, John Schultz, I saw this report in Axios, and this survey made me laugh because 75% of executives, people in the C-suite, think their company's AI rollout in the last year has been successful, but less than half of employees, only 45%, think that their company's AI rollout in the last 12 months has been a success. Which one's right?
Well, I don't know if there's right or wrong, but I think there's something in the middle. One of the things is, the executives set the strategy and the employees basically determine the tactical plan and make it happen. Oftentimes, I find even myself that said, okay, we're going to go plan this and go do this. And sometimes things are oversimplified. And implementing an AI policy or AI system into a corporate America is not as simple as most people think. You have to basically start from the ground up. You have to understand what kind of information you have within your organization, because you want to minimize outside influences within the information you're trying to do to help your business grow. And I'll just use, for instance, the brokerage industry. I've got a very good friend that their organization uses AI to basically work with the sales team when they're talking to a client. They'll record the conversation with the client's permission, and AI will basically, based upon the customer's threshold for investments and stuff like that, comes back with a reasonable analysis of what they're trying to accomplish, and it also comes back with next steps, an action plan. So we also do the same thing. We have that action plan for our client out there in the field so that they have reasonable expectations. We try to communicate those as much as we can so that everybody can communicate it across all aspects of their operation. So I think that's really kind of where we're going to start seeing. It's going to be a little bumpy for 2025, but I think 26 and 27, it's going to be really, really positive the way I look at it.
Well, John Schultz, over here, we don't have real jobs at WBAP. I'm just like playing around. So AI has been nothing but fun. I could put my producer Garrett, I can put him in one of those ketchup bottle costumes like from Handmaid's Tale, or I could make it put Mike Traina in a dress. So, I mean, maybe there's a little workplace tension because of that, but I think it's funny.
Yeah, I do too. You know, it's kind of interesting. Anytime automation is being introduced into the marketplace, and I look at AI as an automation process. You know, when we were talking about robots and into the manufacturing world, you know, you look at the automotive industry. Years ago, they have invested heavily into robotic assembly lines, and everybody was all in the uproar about losing jobs and stuff like that. Well, that person that was basically screwing the nut on the wheel, basically at one time was probably making a few dollars an hour. Today, he's operating that robot. He's making $100 an hour. So, you know, it's really kind of an opportunity for the labor force to take a look at their skill set and allow the organization, hopefully the organization's got a good training program, to upgrade their skills. And I'm seeing that all across the trades also. You know, the air conditioning repair business, the plumbing industry, the electrical industry, all of those are basically having to figure out how to basically upgrade the skills of their technicians, because those technicians have a fundamental understanding of what needs to be done. If they can make them more efficient in their job and their task, they'll be able to accomplish more, and basically the profits will actually soar within an organization. That's really what it's about. Not necessarily displacing employees and making them disgruntled, but how do we basically upgrade their skill set so they can be more productive, more beneficial, and have a few more dollars in their back pocket whenever they at the end of the day.
Yeah, it feels like any of these technological advancements, you know, like when we invented the combine to harvest corn, you know, well, what's going to happen to all the people that are picking corn? They'll get better jobs. Picking corn is not a job we need to hold on to for the rest of humanity's sake. But John Schultz, I'm kind of out of time here. Well, what's coming up next on your podcast?
Well, actually, we are always talking about the different things out there. We've got we're heading to Chicago to interview a client of ours that has been a customer of ours for 5 different golf courses. You know, sometimes I kind of question his movement, but in the golf industry, you don't move very well and very far unless you're really good at your task. And he was actually a former superintendent at Detroit Golf Club, where they hold the Rocket Mortgage PGA Tour event. So that's our next venture. We'll be doing that in April.
All right, this is John Schultz. You can find the John Schultz podcast if you just search for it. Your computer knows where it's at. Thank you very much, sir. Something magical might have just happened. I'm not entirely sure here, but we saw before the James Show even started, there was talk of Trump's going to sign some executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. And then while I was talking in that last segment, he actually came out and did it. So we hit pause on his statement after signing it, and let's go ahead, or before signing it, let's go ahead and listen to that now.
But I believe we'll get it done. Today we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all.
That's all I needed to hear, really.
And it sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it. And everybody knows it's right. And the Democrats know it's right. And I hope they're going to be voting for it, because ultimately it may come before them. But everybody knows it's right. And we have to get our children educated. We're not doing well with the world of education in this country, and we haven't for a long time. And we're pleased to be joined today by the woman who I chose because she's an extraordinary person, and hopefully she will be our last Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon.
All right, thank you, Garrett. There we go. All right, now this doesn't mean it's a done deal, because technically Congress has to not include the Department of Education in the next appropriations bill. There has to be a piece of legislation to formally end it. But up until then, he has the executive power, discretion to bring it all the way down to its constitutional minimum of one employee. Now, all the money for the Department of Education just got appropriated last week through that stupid continuing resolution. So the spending cuts for the Department of Education can't happen before September, I don't think, unless another bill comes through. But we're going to have a fight on our hands at the end of September to make this thing legit. But this is a huge step in the right direction. And he hadn't balanced the budget yet, but he has closed the border. He has fired a lot of people who needed to get off of our backs and now signing an executive order. I mean, this is something that I was hoping would happen on day one. So, man, finally some good news today. I've been griping about a lot today. I'm not griping about this. This is party time, baby. One of the most embarrassing failures in federal government history is the Department of Education. The arguments against it are so weak sauce. I saw someone say, we're going to eliminate our Department of Education. Every other developed nation has a Department of Education. Yeah. And how many of them have sent somebody to the moon? Oh, that's right. None of them. And here's the more important part. We didn't get our Department of Education until after I was born. But before we had our Department of Education, we were kicking all of their butts. The people with the Department of Education, we were beating them all in academics. And since we got one, we have fallen into the middle of the pack. We've just become another one of the same people trying out the same failed policies that failed everywhere else on the planet. Fantastic news. So happy. 800-288 9227. I'm going to gloat through this break, and then we'll talk to David Hamilton from America's Future Series about what's going on in foreign policy. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. So I saw this being passed around on my social media. There's a hot debate going on in Austin right now over what the new laws are going to be for a whole host of things. But when it comes down to SB 3, this is a law that the summary looks like it would re-ban THC. It had been unbanned somewhat, kind of, sort of, during the Trump 1.0. One of his farm bills kind of snuck it in there. And then I saw this guy, and I was like, man, I got to get him on the show. His name's John Burke. I'll play the audio that got my attention first, and then you'll meet him on the phone here.
What gives these people the right to tell free citizens what they can and cannot consume? Because last I checked, we all fought for that right. How dare you sit here and presume to lecture veterans as he has? In 2019, I started Shell Shock CBD because I saw how much CBD, Delta 8 and Delta 9 can help combat veterans such as myself. These experts you brought in here from law enforcement did not list one statistic of someone that actually died from THC overdose, because nobody ever has.
These high THC consumables are causing slower, less conspicuous deaths and disabilities.
I see vape shops and alcohol and gun stores, but I don't see you calling to ban any of that. Why is that? We can have Congressman Perry sit here and say, are you a doctor? Well, my question is reversed. Are you?
I'm not a doctor for sure.
What gives these people...
There we go. That's John Burke. Now let's meet him on the phone. John Burke, welcome to WBAP.
Hey, thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. So the double whammy on why I wanted to have you on is you are in the DFW area. Tell them about your background real quick and why you have a little bit of credibility compared to the average guy on the street.
Yeah, well, I launched ShellShockCBD.com like back in 2019, right before COVID hit, and we just exploded. We offered great competitive deals, primarily to veterans. That was my target audience because as a combat veteran myself, I was kind of skeptical of CBD and Delta 8 and Delta 9 until I actually tried it, and I was like, oh, this stuff actually works. It's incredible. There's no negative side effects. There's no downside to this. So we started a company, and we've done well, and then we opened up a brick and mortar in Richardson, and then about maybe a year and some change ago, we started hearing rumor floating around that Dan Patrick was wanting to ban THC, Delta 8 and Delta 9 in Texas. And it's like, well, it's been legal since 2019. Why now? Because Congress has already had a few sessions. So come to find out, when you dig into Dan Patrick's donations, he's got a lot of big alcohol donors. And that's the issue right here, is that you've got big tobacco, you've got big alcohol now playing the role as big pharma. So at the hearing that we attended, they brought out all of these. We had the chief of police from the Allen Police Department, who's just a straight up nerd. Screw that guy. He sits there and he lies to the people. This is a representative.
not a rapper, a person that serves and protects the people, and he lied about it. You heard it in the clip that you played. It's like, it's led to deaths and blah, blah, blah. No, it hasn't. It's the same as COVID. Like, somebody died and they had COVID in their system. They didn't die from COVID.
Let me play a little devil's advocate here. Some of the examples that were brought up was some kid out in Pecos did some THC products. It gave him a psychotic episode, and he jumped in front of a train.
That's not the THC's fault. Like, he shouldn't have been consuming. I mean, he knew. It's no different. The same argument applies to alcohol. The same argument applies to guns. I checked your profile. You're libertarian, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
I catch all kinds of crap for it, too. Don't worry about it.
Same here, bro. Same here. I believe in legalizing all drugs. Because, like, Rand Paul made a good point. Is like, if they legalize crack tomorrow, how many of you are going to go smoke it? Now, how many of you that are smoking it are already getting it? So the war on drugs, I mean, you know this. This is like libertarian handbook. It's been lost. We've wasted billions of dollars. And here's the thing. The big argument they have is that it's going to turn Texas blue. It's like, no, it's not. The last election, we flipped 4 counties. It did not turn Texas blue. We've turned more conservative. But the thing is, though, you got these boomers like Lieutenant Dan there, who's antiquated. He's outdated. That this is no longer what the GOP needs. I'm kind of down the middle. But I'm telling you right now, the way I've seen Republicans operate in Texas, it's almost the point where I'm ready to walk away. I'm not saying I'm voting left, but I'm like, you've lost me. You no longer represent the needs or the will of the people because nobody was calling for this. Nobody asked for this. This was them, big donors, and this is the same guy that also said he wanted to ban alcohol. So he's a prohibitionist. It's like there's no place for these antiquated types in our Texas legislature anymore.
Well, John, I don't think we're going to convince anyone that fentanyl should be illegal that doesn't already believe it. Right. But let's go on the low hanging fruit. I don't see how anybody, even philosophical conservatives, social conservatives, could be against using CBD or THC products to treat shell shock, to treat PTSD and our veterans. So just use your experience and tell people what you have seen firsthand and how this has helped your community.
Oh my God. It's, well, before we address that, there's also the teacup bill right now, the Texas Choice Program. Essentially, that's what they're referring to is let the state issue your meds. Well, number one, THC should not be treated as if this is something that is a medication for PTSD. This should be treated as recreational. It's no different than alcohol. It's no different than anything else. But the thing is, they're going to try and put it in that context of it needs to be overseen. Like the state has got to regulate it. Well, the problem is there was a lady there, a combat veteran from Iraq, who talked about, I can't even afford the teacup. It's thousands of dollars. I can't afford this, but I can go buy for us, we sell a bag of gummies for like $30.
I don't know what I don't know what you're saying. What is teacup?
The Texas Compassionate Use Program. So here's the crazy part. A lot of people don't know. That same day, that same bill was being voted on. So Dan Patrick and Congressman Perry, that nerd, sits there and they talk about that. And, the chief of police from Allen, THC, Delta 8 and Delta 9, they're killing people. While in the same breath talking about, but we're going to vote to let veterans go through the state to get the Delta 8 and the Delta 9, that's killing people. This is how stupid these people are. This is how stupid your elected representatives are in Congress and Texas people. They need to start paying attention. So my experience is where I served 4 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. From Fallujah, al-Najaf, Baghdad, to the Korangal Valley in Afghanistan as an infantry guy. Saw a lot of combat. But the thing was, though, for me, it was always something to help relax, something to help just kind of get out of your head about stuff. And that's what THC has been. And so that's why the Vietnam generation favored it so much. But unfortunately, you're going to have people that don't understand what it is try and demonize it. For example, like CBD is nothing more than an anti-inflammatory. That's literally it. It's not going to get you high. So we sell it for our arthritic patients or customers, people that have skin conditions or delayed onset muscle soreness. It does wonders. It's one of our top sellers. And then we offer THC products that a lot of our veterans take, and we have sleep products for veterans that can't sleep, and it's for everybody, but it goes big. And I also have members of the federal Congress taking my stuff. So that's what I'm saying. Like, this is not about the safety of Texans. This is about big money, big donors. That's all this is.
John Burt, do we know where this came from? And I know you have the obvious connection between Dan Patrick's donors in the alcohol industry or whatever, but what is their narrative? They're not saying, well, we got to bring this up because my alcohol donors want me to. Like, what is their excuse for this?
Well, they're not going to come right out and say it, but essentially, yes, when you have something in the terms of kind of like alcohol or tobacco where people are putting their money, you introduce Delta 8, it's going to take away from that, because if you really think about it, let's just compare the two. how much money are you going to spend when you go out to a bar and you want to get a good buzz? Let's talk about, you personally.
That's about $70 after tips.
$70. That's $70 in the Biden economy, so that's a lot. Versus I can drop $30 to go to get, like I said, a bag of THC gummies that I only take half a gummy, and it gives me that euphoric feeling within 30 minutes. That gummy cost me about $1.30, and there's no hangover. There is no forgetting myself. It's just a much more pleasant experience. So when you stack the two, people that are older in age are like, I am tired of spending that much money on alcohol, and I'm tired of how it makes me feel. You're ingesting a lot of calories and sugars. With gummies and edibles, that's not the case. It is a more healthy way of achieving that euphoric feeling that some people feel like with alcohol. So that's why a lot of people are switching over. So big alcohol doesn't like competition, neither does big tobacco. But they're not saying anything in terms of that. What they're saying is that it's a danger to kids. So that's the thing that Dan Patrick is pushing. It's a danger to kids. Well, we card. Every single person that walks through those doors, we have to check IDs. Well, technically we don't. This is the part where they want to talk about regulation that I actually agree with. It's like, yes, you should be required to check ID when somebody walks through that door. But here's the kicker as a business owner, is that the banks already regulate. To find a CBD or a Delta 8, Delta 9 bank that will do business with you, it's very difficult. We managed to find one, and they will go through and they'll look at your inventory, and they basically told us about 3 products that we couldn't carry because it looked a little too cartoonish, might appeal to children, even though that was not the intent, and we pulled it. It's like, okay, fair enough. So the market already regulates itself, and then there's the aspect of a certificate of analysis, which essentially is a breakdown of what's in that product. Because if I walked into any store, say like you opened up a CBD store, I walk in, I pick up a product, what proof do I have that what you say is in this product? Because when it comes to THC and things, people are very skeptical, as they should be. Well, we send all of our products out to get third-party tested, and you can't lie, you can't fib on these things, and they give you a breakdown of what's actually in the product, and we post that on our website because we're primarily e-commerce, but we do have a brick and mortar. But when you post that, it's not regulated that we have to, but a consumer comes in. It'd be like going to a meat market, and then are you going to buy option A, meat without the packaging that says what is it, where it was from, what date it is, or meat B that has nothing on it? You're probably going to pick A. So the market already has a way of regulating itself based upon consumer education. But as per the norm, nanny state government wants to come in there and say, well, we need to take this away from people because they're not asking the right questions. Well, regulate it and say all companies have to provide a certificate of analysis, and that's roughly like $250 that you pay to get it tested, and that gives the consumer some comfort. And then it doesn't stop there, though, because Congressman Perry also wants to put a tax or a sort of a licensing, a $10,000 licensing to even sell CBD in the state of Texas. And his reasoning, you can go back and you can watch the actual interview he does on this. It says, well, it's an $8 billion industry, they can afford it. Well, brother, if you know who Milton Friedman is, if you know anything about Economics 101, the consumer is best benefited when the free market is left alone and you have more businesses and competition. It drives down the cost of goods. When the government comes in there and now says, like, oh, by the way, your first hurdle of you setting up a business is you got to pay $10,000. That's just to get your licensing fee. How many of those small businesses have now just been sunk in the water? They're not going to compete. Now you've got mainline brands that are in competition, and ultimately it's going to be a monopoly by somebody that has been produced by the government coming in there with the best of intentions. And that's what I'm saying. They're not thinking. These are our elected representatives, and some moron like me can put holes through this thing from a mile away.
John, we're out of time. John Burke, how do we find you online?
ShellshockCBD.com. Use code BoomerDan. Get 25% off.
Boomer Dan. I love that. All right. John Burke, Shell Shock CBD over in Richardson. I appreciate your time, sir. Good luck.